what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Hello and welcome to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. This is our ongoing show where we are reaching out to you, the family IT technical support person, or someone maybe who's relying on other family members to be your IT support people a little more than you'd like. And we're here to help be your technical resource for home and family technologies. I am one of the Brothers in Tech, Alan Jackson, with me, my brother, Brian Jackson. How you doing, Brian?
Good, Alan. How are you?
Yeah, doing pretty good. You ready for another deep dive as we go into our topic that we started earlier this month, where we talked about the idea of going paperless? We're going to do another deep dive on that. So,
trying to get rid of the clutter. So, yeah, this will be fun. Now we get to try to maybe blend some of these ideas together and talk about how we actually use them. So, rather than just the some of the individual strategies, we can kind of start to blend these together a little bit.
Yeah, so that's really what we're going to do is talk about workflow. So in the previous deep dives and in the main topic, we talked about kind of the concept of going paperless, what that means, how you could accomplish that. In the deep dives, we've talked about the input devices like your digital pencils and handwriting or note-taking. And then we also talked about the idea of scanning your paper documents that you may have laying around or coming in. But, that's a lot of things happening, a lot of actions. When people actually start putting this into place in a daily basis, they're going to find a routine that they're going to get into or need to get into to kind of make sure everything goes in the right place and know what to do with these files and notes and everything as they start taking them. So that's really what we're going to talk about is a little bit of this workflow idea as kind of this deep dive. So Brian, a lot of the things we're going to be talking about in this deep dive are items or elements we've already discussed in a previous episode.
Right.
Note-taking apps, scanners or phone scanners, other ways of using gathering these things. But really, we're just wanting to talk about what do you do once you start gathering all this stuff in and it starts coming into your computer, your system? How do you start managing it and kind of working that into a flow? So Brian, talk me through, something like let's just start with something that's pretty common for people. The idea of receipts, people get a lot of paper receipts on things. Let's kind of talk through some workflows on that.
I think that's a big
Brian.
one. And that's certainly the one that I have tried to think through a lot, because that is a point in time where you get a lot of paper and it's given to you in the moment and you're not at home and you've got to figure out a way to potentially organize that so that you can access it later if you choose to do so. I know a lot of people are starting to, forego the receipts and maybe things are digital. You can search for them later.
And I think down the road, that'll obviously be where we probably go. But for now, people are still getting paper receipts. And especially if you work for a business and you've got to turn them in to get reimbursed or you've got to track them or whatever it may be. So,
So, for me, what I started thinking about is obviously, my phone, I'm going to have my phone with me wherever I go. And that's going to be a common piece of equipment that'll be with me. So I started to look at ways that I could quickly scan receipts, organize them in a way that, I tend not to go back and look at receipts that often.
Yeah.
But of course, if I don't save them, there'll be that one that I need. And so for me, it's less about organizing each individual receipt in a particular category. It's probably more about getting the receipts to a folder that I can go and search later if I need to, and maybe organizing them simply by day and time that they were put in there. So, for me, Alan, as I really start thinking through workflow, one of the things that I didn't want to do is I did not want to have a situation where I'm at a restaurant, I get a receipt, I have to open up my phone. I have to look for an app. I have to then tag whatever it is that I'm doing. I have to search for a folder. I have to decide that it's going to go in there and do all of these multiple steps in order to get my receipt into a place where I can store it for later.
Yeah.
So and I think you're gonna maybe help me out with this a little bit. But to me, I've kind of gone a little simpler and decided that there's so many scanning apps out there, and I've been trying a lot of them lately. One option that I'm starting to use is I have one scanning app that's on the front page of my phone. So it's
Right.
on the home page. It's easy to get to. And I already have it set up so that it goes into Google Drive. I have it set up with the back end of it. It takes a little bit of time initially to kind of set up, but I connect it to Google Drive. And so that I know when I pull this app up, it's automatically pulling my camera open. I snap the picture, it scans, and it knows right away that it's going to save to a receipts folder that I've created in Google Drive.
All right.
So
So you've
therefore,
got
I'm not
this
really,
app.
not really having to do anything other than
You've
that.
got this app dedicated to basically your receipt
That
scanning.
is my receipt app right now. Yep.
And you've already set it up on the back end to say that whenever every photo you take in this app, it's storing it in a certain folder on your personal Google Drive.
Yeah, because the problem I was having, and again, maybe you can help me out with this, but is a lot of these scanning apps, you open it up, it pulls up in the camera, all that's great. You snap, you get the picture, and then right away it's saying, okay, where does it need to go? You've got multiple ways of tagging it. So do you need to put a tag on it right away? Do you need to tell it where it needs to be sent? I didn't want all that happening when I was out purchasing things. You know, if I'm at a counter and I'm getting a receipt, I didn't want this to be something that I had to spend a lot of time trying to get the receipt put aside. Now, someone might say, well, why don't you just take a picture of it and it goes in your photos app anyway, right? And then you can sort it out later. But I really wanted to keep it separate. I didn't want those being stored on my camera roll. I just wanted them to put straight into somewhere that hopefully I wasn't having to pay for, and Google Drive was my way.
So, you know, if you take that same philosophy, Brian, you're kind of taking it from the approach of you're going to have a dedicated app or application for different types of documents, and based on where you already have it steered to go. Let's say, for example, you had that camera app to that one particular scanning app on your phone. That's your receipts app. If you had a desktop scanner at your house or your home for papers, and you have that automatically going to a folder called archive scan documents on that same Google Drive.
Right.
So you're keeping them based on what vehicle you use to scan them.
Yeah, it's a little bit wonky. I mean, it's kind of a way to simplify for me.
Sure.
Right. And I think, again, what I'm trying to get past, and I think most people or many people might have the same issue, is I want it super clear and clean that when I pull out my phone, I know where that quick snap is going to go, and I don't have to go and do any sort of fumbling with it after the fact. So right now, the way I'm thinking of it is I'll have an app that I think does a really good job with receipts, and it's going to be set up to go to Google Drive folder called Receipts. Yeah. I'll probably have one in there for maybe work documents, that I might be scanning, and that will go into a different folder that I can then go in later and try to sort out where it needs to go. But, I don't want it on my camera roll. I don't want it kind of loading up the things that I have to go and delete later. So, how does that, is there,
do you
have some suggestions of how to clean that up a little bit?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's different workflows for different style people. I think it's whatever works best for you, obviously. I think if you know that, hey, I'm using this app and it's going to go into this location and that's where I want it to go, and I'm always happy with it scanning and storing there, I don't need to do any further reorganization once it's in that folder. I just dump everything in there, and I know I can always go back and find it later. Then that works. By that same token, you could have, I know that when you scan things on a desktop scanner or other scanning apps, you can have it go to the default location where you want it to save, like your Google Drive, or you could be somebody that says, like, every time I scan it, I will go in and tell it where folder-wise I want it to go. It's a little more work on the front end, but if you choose to go that route and you want to use the same app to do all your scanning, you could do that. It's just knowing that you're going to put a little more work in on the front end, but at the back end, it's going to be exactly where you want it to be saved.
And I think that's my question. It's how many clicks, right? How many clicks does it take to get this information to where I want to go? Now, if I had an app that I pulled it open, it automatically brought up my camera. I click the picture, and it right away pulls up and says, and which one of these folders do you want to go to? And if it was only two clicks,
shortcuts,
that said, oh, this is a receipt, or this is a work doc, or this is a bill, and then I knew it went to an individual folder because of that, I think I would be very, very happy. But that's what I'm struggling with, and I can't find the right situation to do.
Well, and even so, that's great, but that's also assuming that you're going to be scanning or capturing everything through that one app,
True.
in general. So if you have another app or another application where you're getting documents brought in, unless it has those same shortcuts, those same hotkeys, you're still batting in two different worlds to some degree.
Right.
Again,
which can be confusing. Yeah.
I know. And I mean, I for a long time too, was just using different apps and just having to manually tell it where to go scan these documents and where to organize them. Let me throw out.
This is the point in time where you're going to tell me that you are the more sophisticated brother. Is that right? That you have dealt with these problems way back in your youth, and you have figured them out.
I almost think it's an ongoing segment on our show where this is where Alan enlightens Brian on the better way to do something. So, well, I'm not going to say this is better because this is again very much it's very much a custom personalized thing, whatever works better for individuals' workflows. So I tend to take things from a little different perspective in that I don't necessarily care what application I'm using to scan or capture my docs. Okay. It could be a phone app, could be a phone scanner, could be my desktop scanner. Doesn't matter. What I've ended up doing is a little different. Is I set everything I scan to go to one folder on, it could be a Dropbox or Google Drive, doesn't matter, just a shared folder somewhere. So that is everything scanned goes into this one folder. Doesn't matter if it's a receipt I take with a phone scanner to scan receipts. It doesn't matter if it's from my flatbed scanner on my all-in-one printer, a document, anything. All that is set to, when I hit scan, by default, it's going to scan it to this one Dropbox or Google Drive folder that I have. Okay.
You just titled scanned or something, right? Okay.
Actually, what I title is to be filed, because I'm going to explain what I do next. And this is kind of my goal, is I put everything in this one folder. They commonly say with, when you're trying to get yourself time management wise, the one of the credos they have is that everything should get funneled into one singular inbox. And then you go through a routine of taking that inbox, and your goal is to get that inbox to zero by taking it and putting it in the right place or immediately taking care of it. So I kind of go that approach. It's a little different. Instead of going multiple apps into multiple locations, I go multiple apps into one location. And instead of worrying about the time on the front end, steering it to different places, I'm default going into one place. But then I do have to go through a routine of going into that folder where I've got everything scanned and deciding where to put it. Now, I'm going to give you listeners a little tip. And this is going to harken back to some previous discussions we had. You remember we had a deep dive about the online service that if then that.
Then that.
So IFTTT.com. How that service will allow you to create routines or automated routines that you can work with that are just always going to run in the background whenever you do certain things. So Google Drive and Dropbox are both pretty universally used shared services for storing your files. If I use a service like Evernote as my note-taking, and that's where I ultimately want to organize things because I'm more in the note-taking. I want to keep things in notes at a fingertips notice instead of looking through individual files. I like having everything in my notebooks and notes like in an Evernote notebook. So what I actually do is I use an IFTTT script that says it's always going to look at my Google or Dropbox folder, the one I labeled to be filed. It's always going to check that folder. And the minute a new file gets dropped in there, it actually takes that image, takes that scanned file, and puts it in my Evernote notebook. I have a notebook, a section of my notebook listed as my to be filed notebook. So in other words, it's now creating a notebook full of these items I've been scanning. And from Evernote, because I like using an Evernote or Apple Notes or some of these other note-taking apps, I can quickly say, all right, that one I want to move into this folder, this other notebook folder. Now this item I want to move into this folder. So I'm actually going through a process of looking at all of these scans that are now coming into this to be filed notebook I have on Evernote. And I can now say, where do I want to file it in my other notes? So if I have a folder for a project I'm working on, and I know that, hey, these 3 scanned documents and these 4 receipts sitting in the folder all belong to that project. So I'm just going to drag them over and put them into that folder or into that notebook. So I've now organized everything into these notebooks. And granted, I had to do my processing on the back end, but I can make sure I'm putting it exactly where I want it to go project-wise or for a certain client or for a certain application, whatever it may be. That's more my work style, is that I am actually anticipating that I will use these documents for some reason or need to have them at my fingertips based on a project or some sort of environment I'm working in. Your approach is great if it's just you want to have them backed up and saved. You don't ever really need to work
sort
with
through them.
You know?
Yeah.
In other words, I don't need to go back and look at all these receipts. I just want to make sure I've got them in case I ever do need to reference them. I'm looking at it as more of an active environment that, I scan in these receipts. I do need to attach them to a project, or these documents I just scanned.
Right.
I want to attach them to a certain file in my notebook. So I go that route instead. Again, both approaches are good. It's just a matter of what's your necessary workflow. Are you wanting to scan and go paper?
Let me give an analogy. So what it sounds like is that what you do is very similar to what we do with paper now, which is when things come in, a receipt or a bill or a invoice, right? We tend to, in our household, they go in a pile.
Yeah.
And the pile gets put on the desk. And then every so often, maybe once a week, maybe every other week, all right, we'll go in and say, oh, okay, let me go one by one and put them in the right folder, okay, so I can be able to use them later.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what you're doing, right? Is that you're saying everything's going to go in here, and then you just have to get in a very regular time where you say, all right, maybe you even set yourself an alarm, every night, at 9 o'clock before, I settle things down, I'm going to really quickly do a quick sort. So you're taking the files from the pile, putting them in the correct folder.
Yep.
Whereas I'm talking, as my mind is, I am potentially having multiple people putting it straight into a folder, but also a folder where I may not know and want to sort through that later, right? So I'm kind of having that first step happen, but I get less benefit in the long run, and that it probably all goes into one folder instead of lots of files like you are. You're organizing the files on the back end instead of, having multiple ways of getting into those individual files.
Yeah, but Brian, I'll even say that even in your approach, I mean, it's great because if somebody says, look, I'm just needing to scan documents. I don't need them to be organized to do anything with them. Right. I just want to scan them to make sure I've got a digital copy of them that I can always go back and search through if I needed to find it, but I don't anticipate needing to use them. If you're someone that just says, look, I'm going to deal with the paper I get. I'll handle it right when I get it. Like if I have a form I've got to fill out or there's an article I want to read, I'll do all that right when I get that document, but then I want to scan it or import it into my computer just to keep it. Then what you're doing is perfect. I mean, just snap it, scan it, have it all go to whatever folder that application's just designed to go to. You have a receipts folder on your Dropbox or Google Drive. You have a scanned documents folder up there, and it's there. It's backed up. It's available for you whenever you need it. My approach is more of the what is it? It's the getting things done, that GTD type of mentality where you're trying to develop a workflow of all these things coming in and you're trying to manage them and get them out of your inbox and doing something with them. I kind of treat paper scanned documents the same way. I see them as something I need to organize, get into one place, and then I can figure out what I want to do with them. And it may be a lot of the receipts or documents I scan, I don't need to do anything with them. At least then I can drag them into a archive notebook or a receipts archive or a legal documents archive or whatever. At least I know they're there, just like yours, just like your approach. I'm just taking it. I'm taking it into more of an actionable workflow.
I like your approach, right? I like the idea that if I can create just one step on the back end
Yeah.
to try to organize them. And of course, that really only works if, I decide, all right, it's Google Drive and there's a scanned folder, and now everything in that needs to then get dispersed out to a particular folder. Or Evernote. I like the idea of using Evernote because then that's all searchable very easily.
And you can add notes to it. Like if you drop in a scanned image into a notebook in Evernote, you can also then type in notes to reference, anything about that document or anything else you need to have.
A bill that you paid, you type in that it's been paid on a certain date. Yeah. Okay.
It's really just different workflows we're talking about. And I'm, I got taught a while back, doing some time management work that, having this inbox, even back before I was doing a lot of digital scanning, it was a physical box. It's like, that's my inbox. Everything I need to do goes in there. And then it's a 5-minute process every day to say, okay, I'm going to go through the inbox. And if it's something I can take care of quickly, I'll do it quickly. If it's something I need to take longer on, then I can at least put it somewhere in my to-do list. I can organize it somehow. So I kind of treat just scanned documents the same way. As I'm going to dump them all into one place, but that one place is a folder I have to go through now 5 minutes a day and put stuff in the right place. Yeah,
so Alan, let me ask you, how do you then handle creating new documents in that same way? So you've got scanned documents that come into Evernote, and then you disperse them out to the folders. And do you just use Evernote then to take your notes?
Yeah.
So you're taking a note in that particular folder. So
and Evernote will let you merge
automatically.
And Evernote will let you merge different notes together. So if I had a note where I was putting all my scanned documents for a certain thing, and then I did some handwritten notes, be like, oh yeah, that handwritten note actually goes with those scanned documents for that same project. Then I can merge, and now I have one note that has all my handwritten notes, my typed notes, and any scanned documents together in one place. It's nice if you're working on a lot of different projects and you need to keep things kind of a little more organized or clean that way. But again, it also means that, if I said Evernote was my primary app for doing everything, then that's what I would be using. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not using Evernote right now. I'm using Apple Notes primarily for note taking. So I'm a little bit in limbo in that I don't have, Apple Notes doesn't have quite that same scripting capability for IFTTT. It can't dump in stuff in Apple Notes. So I'm kind of working on some different ways of handling that. But if you are someone who likes Evernote, and Evernote's a great app, I use it for a long time. It's really great because you can streamline and automate that entire workflow. So it's really snap a receipt with your phone scanner. It's already set up to scan to that one folder on Google Drive. If I scan on my desktop scanner a legal document that came in the mail or some form I had to want to keep a hold of, scan it, everything goes in that same folder. And then I just go through some 5-minute processing on a regular basis of putting it in the right Evernote folder. As long as I have that IFTTT script automatically syncing. That's what its job is, to say, I'm going to take everything that's in that Google Drive folder that I ever see show up there, and I'm always going to drop it into this one notebook in Evernote so that Alan can go in and organize it a little better for himself.
And do you, just not to complicate things, but do you have to have that step? So IFTTT also has some take this and put it straight to Evernote, options as well.
As far as like going from a
taking an image and putting it straight into Evernote.
Oh yeah. So you could certainly do that. The difference is that you've got a map. You just got to make sure every app you're scanning can go into that same notebook and be organized in that same place. That desktop
scanner also has to go to Evernote, which may be a little tricky.
It's a little trickier. Right? I haven't found a lot of desktop scanners and other things that will do it. Now, if you can find apps and use only apps that will all feed to that one notebook in Evernote and actually imports them directly into Evernote, then you don't need the IFTTT scripting at all. You could just push it right to it. That would be awesome. But I haven't seen all the universal apps that I would use with that capability yet. So.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
So just to summarize, if someone is only going to use their phone, and that's going to be their scanner, they don't have a scanner at home. What they have is their phone, their iPad, something is going to be their way of scanning. There won't be a need necessarily to do that extra step. You can use IFTTT and put a little applet or a little automated step that says, when I click this button, it's going to scan and it's going to send it to Evernote or to Microsoft OneNote is another thing that I think has a lot of IFTTT connections.
That's true, yeah.
Or to Drive or to wherever you decide you're going to be organizing things. That can happen pretty easily. And that is something that I would suggest to anybody that's looking for a simple way of using your phone, scanning, putting things into a way that you can store them and organize them. Then IFTTT makes it really easy to do. Yeah. Of course, all the other scanning apps do the same thing, but kind of depends on whether you want to buy one that actually has some different features enabled, right?
Yeah, right, absolutely. And what I really recommend to people, Brian, when I'm talking to them about this kind of thing is, I start out by saying, I think we probably should have started out saying this episode too. Pretty much any way you could kind of design that you wanted to handle your scan documents or your note-taking and organization, there's a way to do it. Yeah. It may take a little configuring, it may take a little customization of some different applications, but you can get it done. So I always recommend people to kind of map out what's your ideal workflow. What is something that you feel like would work for your own work style and your own preferences? Are you someone that just doesn't want to finagle with a whole bunch of different stuff? You just want to shoot everything on one mobile app and scan everything with your camera, and that's all you want to do. And then you want to have it available to you to organize into folders or however you wish to do it on the back end. Then know what that goal is, and there are workflows that will get you there. There's not a wrong workflow. It's just one that's the best fit for you.
Yeah.
I tend to like to process afterwards. What I find myself guilty of, which is why I think I do more of the post-processing, where I just want to get everything in one place and I'll organize it later, is if I'm in a meeting or I'm talking to someone and someone shows me a document, it's like, hey, and I just say, well, let me just snap that real quick. I don't want to do a lot of thinking right there on the spot. I'm normally trying to process things as quickly as I can or snap things or scan things quickly. I don't normally have a lot of time on the front end to designate exactly where I want it to go and figure out how I want to tag it or organize it or whatever. I just want to snap it. And I figure I'll have over coffee the next morning, I can sit down and look in my notebook of all the things I scanned the previous day and say, oh yeah, let me drop this here, or let me make a to-do item off of this one, or let me organize this in this notebook. And I'd rather do that on my own pace than when I'm actually scanning the documents. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, it does.
But if somebody's more regimented than me and can actually designate where they want stuff to go on the spot, then you probably save yourself a lot of time on the back end. Yeah. You don't need that.
No, but I think you're right. That's the part that keeps people from actually committing. Yeah. Is once they go through it a few times and realize, oh, wait a minute, this is something I don't want to be doing at a restaurant. Yeah. Is deciding what folder is this going in, right? Yeah. I just want to take the pick and I'll deal with it later, but I don't want to lose it, right? And that sounds like what you've set up, which is great. Initially, I kind of did a wonky way of setting that up and say, anything I do with this app will happen that way, right? It'll be for receipts. But I do like if you can save yourself the post-processing time, put it aside, make sure that you go to it like you would on your inbox. I think that's a good place. So maybe my advice would be think about the back end first. It's like, if let's pretend like everything is paper still. How do you like to organize your paper so that you can use it effectively? Yeah. And now imagine all of that paper, if you like it organized in a file cabinet, or if you like it organized in a big pile, imagine all that was digital. Yeah. And how would you work with that information the same way? If I like it in folders, great. Let's organize the folders first. Is that Drive or is that Evernote or is that blah, 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 blah? Then you come and say, now here's all these different options of ways I can get information into that file, right? Yep. And there's plenty of ways of doing it. So yeah, that's great.
I will say above anything else, my only strongest recommendation for somebody is to make sure that whatever you're doing with your documents, make use of these online services like Dropbox or Google Drive to store your documents. And I'll tell you, because they automatically back up for you. I mean, they are backed up. They are secure.
Mm-hmm.
They are, you've got them in a much safer place than I would think you do just sitting on your phone or sitting on your computer, your desktop computer. So, and plus they're accessible everywhere. If you snapped a receipt if you scanned a receipt at your home office on a flatbed scanner, but it's got saved up into Google Drive or Dropbox, either one, or any other online file service, the fact that you could pull it up on your phone if you're somewhere and you need to reference it, you could find it, you could get to it, is invaluable. And I think also knowing that it's secure, it's safe, it's backed up. If your computer crashed, you don't need to worry about, did you lose all that? It's up there on the cloud. I'm a big fan of that. I think that's my strongest recommendation. Whatever your workflow is, to me, the number one goal is get those scanned documents and items and notes and handwriting somewhere on the cloud that they're saved, they're accessible everywhere, and you have a lot more flexibility of what you do with them. So
that's great. That's great.
So that's general workflows. I know we weren't really like giving a lot of specific technical things. It's more concepts of workflows, but I think the goal is to understand that all the things we've been talking about, honestly, for like the last couple months, all starts to kind of work together. And if you kind of use those individual tools the right way and you get them set up the way you want them, you can develop a workflow that really is going to, I think, save you time. It's going to give you peace of mind a lot of places. And I still feel like we as human beings with what we choose to remember and memorize, if we know something is captured and it's in a good, solid location that's easy to get to, it takes the burden off us to try to remember specifics about it. We just know it's there, it's safe, and we can pull it up anytime we need to. That's the biggest thing for this whole going paperless conversation for me, is the reason why I spend so much time trying to really build this process that works, because I feel like it gives me a little more mental sanity on a daily basis.
Right.
You know,
right? Yeah. I mean, the key is you set up your system so that you actually feel confident taking that piece of paper and putting it in the recycling bin.
Yeah.
And know that you have that it takes a little bit of confidence to set it up right, to be able to drop it in and say, that's a piece of paper that I actually need, or the content I need. I'm getting ready to put it in the recycle bin, knowing that I have to be confident it's still there, right? Yeah. The info is still there. And so I think once you set that up, it really is very freeing, right? It's very liberating.
Absolutely.
So
it really is.
Yeah. Well, let's get some bits.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, let's kind of wrap up our show with a Brothers in Tech suggestion, our BITS acronym. Yeah. That's we try to both recommend something that we feel like might kind of help supplement what we've been discussing, or something in the general same topic area here. One suggestion each. Brian, you want to go? You want to go first?
Yeah. No, I'd love to. So what's been nice is that preparing for these going paperless podcast has kind of forced me to go and try lots of little apps for scanning, which I actually enjoy doing. I like trying out different apps to figure out which one really does what I want it to do. And on this kind of idea of paperless and scanning, I tried a bunch of different scanning apps. I think I mentioned one before, CamScanner, which is the one I mentioned that had a watermark to it on the free version, but you could pay upfit it a little bit further. So I found a different one, and this is after doing a lot of research on different scanning apps, and it's called Genius Scan. And so Genius Scan, which is a free app initially, but has an upgraded feature to it. Here's why I like it. It's all of them do the same thing, right? You pull it up, it opens up the camera app and allows you to snap a picture. The reason I like Genius Scan is that, for one, it takes one button out of play. So the moment you open it up, and I think it's a little plus sign that says open up the camera, and then it starts searching the field for the paper. Oh. And so I don't have to tell it to snap the picture. It actually snaps the picture automatically once it gathers what it sees.
So once it sees,
assuming you are on a desk or you're on a table that there's not lots of white stuff around, or lots of paper, individual paper things, you just hold it out there. It recognizes the edge of the paper. It snaps it. and then it holds it and says, okay, this was page 1. And you could click the plus button to add another page to this. So if you want to do the backside or the next page, and it does the same thing. You just hold it up there. It snaps it automatically. You don't have to push the button. And then you say, great, I'm done with that document now. Maybe I've added 3 pages, but I'm done. And it has lots of, if you do the updated or the upgrade feature, which I did, and I did it because it's not a monthly fee. It's a one-time $8 fee to have all the pro versions of this thing, which include the OCR, itself, include the ability to automatically export, which I have it set up to export to Evernote or export to Drive. You can do either one of those, or you can do several of Dropbox. But so now this thing is nice in that I feel I can go to a restaurant, I can have them deliver the receipt. I can click one button, which is to open the app, hold it up there, it snaps it, and I can put it away.
And you're done.
And I know for a fact that it is there. Now, of course, I may have to go back and do some post-processing. It's got ways of doing tagging. So you could tag it as a receipt. You could tag it as a home document. You could tag it as a work document. You can put in whatever tags you want. But that then gets sent automatically to, I think I have right now set to Google Drive under a receipts folder. And it saved that extra little step of having to tell it to click, because I don't know if you're like me, that when I tend to push click, I tend to shake the camera a little bit, and there's all sorts of problems. So anyway, Genius Scan, I'm a big fan so far. I've only been using it for a few days, but it's really great.
So the upgrading to the $8 paid version does that give you all the exporting to the different services? Or? Yes,
it gives you everything except their cloud service. If you want their cloud service, which allows you to store it on their cloud, then there's a monthly fee. Okay. I think it's called the Genius Cloud or something. But
if you just wanted to go to Plus, Google Drive, Dropbox, right? Those.
And again, I'm I have a hard time paying services that continue to go every month. I know there's a benefit, right? And that I know that company is going to continue to update things and I'm not going to be left out. But I'm a big fan of, I like what you have. I want to pay for it right now. And then know that I'm not stuck paying things for a very long time unless I know there's an additional benefit. So
give it to me, leave me alone, and I'll let you know if I need anything else in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So cool. Genius Scan.
So, all right. So my bit is a little different in that I'm kind of going to go the opposite direction and say, all right, let's say you've listened to everything we've had to say and said, you know what? Screw you guys. I don't want to do all this.
Which I think is a very possible reaction that people are going to have once they listen to us.
They say, look, I've got several hundred receipts or documents or other things that I don't want to sit there and scan. I don't want to worry about kind of finding a good surface to scan them in. I don't want to deal with all that. There are services available that will basically let you just box up or put things in a pouch and send to them. And they'll do the scanning and organizing for you of everything. One service I've had a little bit of experience with that kind of got their act together is Shoeboxed. So that's SHOEBOXED. So like shoebox with the ED at the end.com. It really specializes primarily in scanning of receipts, but you can basically dump anything in there that fits into their pouch. What they really look at is trying to help you with your receipts. So that's their biggest thing though, because what they do with receipts is a little different than any other scanned documents. They can actually take all your scanned receipts, not only scan them for you, but also generate a report for you where they can kind of mine the data out of it so they can see the amounts and they can see the location or where you had the receipt from, and actually give you all that information kind of where you can now organize it and search it on a mobile app. So it's great for if you have a lot of receipts you have to keep turning in for big projects, and you're going to have to generate a report off of it, meaning you got to show all the amounts, you got to show the dates, you got to show the locations of where you spent the stuff. So they basically have a service where it's $23 a month, and for that you can send them up to 600 digital documents where you did the scanning, but you want them to organize it for you and kind of pull all the data from it. Let's say if you've got a big full-size receipt you get from someone like some sort of professional service, scan the document, you can send it to them as well as part of your service, and it's not a physical document, but they'll still pull that same information. Here's the amount, here's the date, here's the name of the vendor, here's all the stuff on there, here's each item on the receipt, and pull it into a report for you. So now you get a report back from them once they've handled all your documents, and you don't have to worry about generating it on your own. So, for example, you can send them paper receipts. They send you a magic envelope, they call it, which basically you just put everything you can in that envelope, send it to them. They'll handle the scanning and organizing and tagging of all your paper documents. But then you can also upload to them actual scanned documents you did with your own phone or scanner. They take all of it, they pull all the important data from all those receipts, they put it together. You get a nice report that you can view, shows you all the expenses, and as well as you can pull up a full scanned image of your receipt as well. So when you create that report, that's maybe something a business need, you may need for a project or something. It's just a great seamless way to do it. So you may be saying, hey, $23 a month, that seems a little high. At a situation like this, I think you have to do a little bit of a time cost analysis. How much time is it going to take you throughout the month to scan all these receipts and then go into an expense report and key in the numbers and key in the dates and all? If you start to put a value on your time and you think it's going to take you more than a couple of hours a month or a few hours a month to do it, $23 a month may totally be worth the time instead to do it and to know it's done right and accurately. So it is a service to look at. There's similar services that do things like with digital or with printed photographs. You put them in a box, send them to a service. They'll scan all the photographs for you. I've seen services that'll say, look, anything you put in this box, it doesn't matter what format it is. It could be a audio CD. It could be a printed photograph, could be papers. We're going to turn them digital for you. This is just a service that really focuses primarily on the idea of receipts and things that need to generate reports and expense list. It's a service that does that. So that's my recommendation. Shoeboxed.com is something turnkey if you're needing that kind of service, especially those of you that do a lot of traveling for work. I think this may be a good worthwhile 20-some bucks a month just to spend.
Yeah, that's good.
Goes completely against everything we've been trying to teach people how to do on their own.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, if you've got to the end of this episode and you're still not wanting to deal with it, then maybe look at a Shoebox or some of these other services. I think you'll find it worthwhile.
If you've listened to us and realized that this makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, right. Or I refuse to put this much time into it. So there you go. All right. Well, Brian, I think we are officially done with the topic on going paperless. So
I think we just helped the environment out immensely, and that a lot of people are going to have less paper in their lives, right?
Well, and I tell you, even just talking about it here kind of rekindles for me, remind me of some other things I want to kind of streamline in my own life too, to get even more paper processes out of the way. So it's good. Even if you and I are the only ones that benefit from this, we've helped each other out.
Quite possible. But at least you and I are better off. We're better off because of it, right?
So I do recommend, if for any reason you jumped into this episode first before hearing in our other ones, you can go back and listen to our main topic on going paperless, plus the previous 2 deep dives we had. When we come back together again, it'll be on a whole nother topic. So we're going to kind of move past going paperless and we'll move on to something else. So that is our show for today. Brian, as always, if people have some questions, suggestions, do you remember what's the email address they need to reach out to?
I think it is info@themesh.tv.
There you go. Bingo. You got it. Yeah. We're only 9 or 10 episodes into this, and you're finally remembering it. So
whenever you mention that, I literally get white in the face and kind of think, "Oh crap, I forgot." But I remember. That's good.
Good.
I got it.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Info@themesh.tv.
That's
so
right.
Please send us not only ideas of how you've gone paperless or some other suggestions that you might have we can bring up later, but also give us some ideas of other topics that you might want covered in the future, things that you think would be useful for other people, because we're looking for ideas. So.
That's great. All right. Well, listen, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Brothers in Tech. And we will look forward to talking to you next time with a whole nother new topic. And until then, take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.